Welcome to episode 59 of the Underdog Sports NBA show. I am Tyler Laurie, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, Zandrick Ellison. Zan, we're on the fifth division in the NBA, the Southeast division, or the Southwest division, which is weird because not all these teams are in the Southwest. But before we get into it, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well. You know, the FIBA World Cup just ended, so I think this is now officially the deadest point of basketball, right? Don't you think like there's really nothing new going on for the next few weeks, but we're still going strong. We're still talking about the Southwest division.
Yeah, Southwest division. The FIBA World Cup, I really want it to be a thing. I don't know why they don't just make it 2 years from the Olympics. I think it would be more of a thing if they did it that way. And again, this is not to make excuses for anything that happened with the NBA. I believe they finished a disappointing 7th after losing to France and then really kind of like laying an egg early against Serbia, coming back and then losing the game. And then they beat, I don't even remember. Who did they beat in the 7th place game? Zan, do you remember? It was on at like 4 a.m. It was like usually they were on at 7, and then all of a sudden I woke up and they had won the 7th place game.
Yeah, I missed that. But yeah, at least they won. They ended on a good note. I don't know.
I mean, here's what I'll say. And I think you totally agree with this, and then we will go right into the Southwest Division. But this isn't by no means a situation, I think, where people should panic. I would be stunned to see them not be an overwhelming favorite on Bovada Sportsbook to start the Olympics next year. Like, if you're looking to bet on some Olympic basketball and like you're not betting on the U.S. because of this season, this World Cup, I understand your kind of trepidation, but this is not going to be the same team. They are going to get some of our better players. I would expect, whether that's like Anthony Davis, Harden, LeBron, Kawhi. I would be stunned if Kawhi played. But you know what I'm saying, Zan. Like, this isn't the team that's going to end up representing us in the Olympics. And it doesn't mean that we're necessarily going to win Olympic gold no matter what, but they're going to be overwhelming favorites at the Olympic Games.
Yeah, we talked about before, like just kind of changing expectations, because in these kind of tournaments, short games, one and done, you can't guarantee. The LeBron teams could have lost to Spain. Like, they were close games. It's possible they could have lost. So, but I agree with you. I think it'll be like 80% chance, or if not higher, that like the A team can come home with the gold.
Yeah, they'll be worse than even money to win the gold medal. Because again, and this is another thing, it seemed like people were pretty adamant that players still do care about winning Olympic gold medals. They don't seem to care about the World Cup. This is the opposite of soccer, whereas like the World Cup is the biggest deal and Olympic gold is like definitely second. It seems like for NBA players, Olympic gold is for sure first, and then this is second. Whereas like with European players, and I don't want to paint with a super broad brush here, but it does feel like they care about the World Cup. They do care about the Olympic gold medal. They care about Eurobasket, right? Like, we see guys go play for their Eurobasket team every summer, and they care about that. So, it'd be interesting to see what type of interest we drum up.
And also, be a test case for that, I think, is, the Hall of Fame is flawed, but how much do they factor in international play for Americans? Obviously, they do heavily for international players. But say Carmelo Anthony, he has a really good Olympic track record. Is that going to be the difference between him getting in the Hall of Fame or not? And if that's the case, then I think players might want to, like those sort of borderline Hall of Famers, might want to win a few gold medals to make the Hall of Fame.
Right. Like, does Kemba Walker winning 2 gold medals, if he never wins a title, but averages like 23 points a game for his career and plays a long career and scores like 20-something thousand points, like, does that get him into the Hall of Fame? It's interesting.
Yeah, I think it matters. Like, Draymond Green just recently said he's interested in playing. Like, for a guy like that, if he could come away saying like, I won multiple titles in the NBA, won a gold medal, like, I think that does affect his legacy and his chances.
Yeah, I actually think that's a pretty good point. And again, I would expect, on this team, I would. Kemba Walker's going to play. Miles Turner has been a part of the program for a long time. I would expect that Miles Turner will make the team again. And then after that, I would assume Donovan Mitchell and Jason Tatum, if they want to be part of it in terms of like young guys. But I mean, we could see a very different team moving forward. And I think, again, I think it was good for these guys to get experience. I also think it's important to watch guys who are not considered to be like very good or great NBA players in a European setting and understand like why these guys come over, because, and Ricky Rubio is a guy that you have written about a lot and talked about a lot, but like, you watch Ricky Rubio playing for Spain and you watch how physical he's able to be and how he controls a game, and you're like, oh man, like, I get it. It's a different style of basketball. And you would think that the U.S. would have enough guys, and they probably do, to be able to just play the way they want, and they certainly have in the past. But in this particular tournament, they didn't have enough guys to be able to do that. It's just the bottom line with this talented of a European basketball pool and the roster that the U.S. brought to the table with the time they had to prepare. They just were not able to kind of coalesce fast enough to be able to, I think, really break through. I mean, I think that's the bottom line with this group of guys.
And one last thing, and I think we'll transition into the league, but I think is natural transition. My one takeaway from the tournament was Marc Gasol. Watching Marc Gasol and Ricky Rubio, it sounds like a cliche, but it's true. It's like a joy to watch two guys with that kind of basketball IQ play together. And two things, like they were like, it's like ESP, like they were like winking at each other and laughing at each other. They clearly, like, it reinforced two things for me. Like, not only is it important to have a basketball IQ, of course, and like understand the game, but to have a teammate on that same wavelength. Like, like if we're playing pickup and you are the greatest, Magic Johnson level basketball IQ, and I don't know what the hell I'm doing, or when to cut or where to go, like it doesn't do you much good. But to have like two guys who can like play that way at that high level. And then also the fact that they've probably been playing together since they were like 15 years old.
Forever. Yeah. A long time.
Guys, played around each other or maybe played AAU or in all-star games, like to have two guys who probably played like, I don't know, hundreds of games together in international play has to help a lot too.
I mean, I think so. I mean, I think that's why the Australian team is also like really fun to watch, because those guys have all played together. If you haven't seen Andrew Bogut have like an absolute meltdown after the game and scream and shout about where the FIBA offices is and how it's rigged, you should check that out on Twitter. But that'll probably be the last sort of Andrew Bogut information that we have this year. And I will, Zan, you're right. We should transfer into the Southwest Division. The division, for those of you that don't know, because nobody knows any of the divisions, is Memphis, New Orleans, Dallas, San Antonio, and Houston. Seems real odd that this is the Southwest Division, Zan. Like, where's like Phoenix? Like what? How many of these teams are actually in the Southwest? Memphis is the Midwest, 100%.
Well, it's mostly just Memphis and New Orleans. Like they kind of like, they're not quite sure where to throw them,
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we're going to go. 3 teams in this division finished 33 and 49 last year. We're going to go in order of their over-under on Bovada for who we talk about first. So we will talk about the Memphis Grizzlies to start. Last year, like I said, 33 and 49. This year's over-under on Bovada is 26.5, Zan. They did draft Ja Morant, as everyone knows. They also drafted Brandon Clark. Bunch of new guys on this team, but also a very odd group of like older veterans. So here's what I'll do. Starters, this is what I think will happen. Ja Morant, Dylan Brooks, who they seem to be like in love with, and he missed a ton of time last year with injuries. Kyle Anderson, same deal, played about half the year. Jaren Jackson Jr., your favorite guy. And then my assumption is Jonas Valanciunas, which seems stupid because JJJ is definitely a 5-man. They signed Tyus Jones to what appears to be a very fair deal. They traded for Grayson Allen. They picked up Jay Crowder in the same deal. They got your guy Josh Jackson off the scrap heap, so they have a second JJJ. Bruno Caballo, they seem to want a lottery ticket on. They have Brandon Clark, like I said, Solomon Hill, Miles Plumlee, Andre Iguodala. Super weird team. Your initial thoughts on this roster?
Well, what about the new coach?
And Taylor Jenkins, you're right. Taylor Jenkins, new coach. Expectations, I would imagine, not super high for him to start, but a guy that they gave a
well,
nice...
not in terms of the record, but people have been buzzing about Taylor Jenkins ever since he appeared on Create Your Shot podcast. A springboard right into the NBA head coaching ranks. What do you think of that?
Yeah, it's funny. He was on Create Your Shot. We did interview him. He did even say on the show that he had some head coaching interviews and that he wasn't ruling anything out, but he thought he was still a year away. He had interviewed with Memphis, I believe, one time prior to this. I think that was your information. I don't think he told me that. But, he went back, he interviewed a couple times, and I think they thought he was ready. And I'm excited to see how he plays. He's a guy that's from the Spurs coaching tree, as it feels like everybody is. He's worked with Mike Budenholzer for a long time. So my assumption is that we will see Ja Morant spray the ball around. They don't appear to have a lot of shooting around him yet. So this could get pretty ugly, but what do you think?
When he said he's a year away, does he mean the team or because it's like, I agree. Like, and in a way, like this is going to be one of the worst teams record wise in the NBA. There's like no doubt about that. But at the same time, like it's not a bad place to be. Compare them to a team like Charlotte, who's going to be another really bad team. Like Memphis has to feel like they have two cornerstones Like they have superstars or potential superstars in John Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. And the idea is that this is the new Mike Conley and Marc Gasol. This is the the new 1-2 punch that's going to lead them 3 years down the road into the playoffs. I don't know. I mean, this year it's going to be bumpy though, right? I mean, like Jaren Jackson Jr. was very young for a rookie last year. So I don't think you can expect him to take a major leap. And John Morant is about the same age, but he's coming from Murray State. And that's just like an enormous jump in competition. I think it's going to be it's going to be tough to win. What did you say the over-under is again?
26.5, which seems high, I think, with how good the West is.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's optimistic. And I think it's based partly on the fact that fans really like those two young players. And they should, but in the West, I don't think there's any chance they win 30 games even.
Here's sort of my question. Why is this team like Solomon Hill? Like they want contracts and they seem to be doing a pretty good job. And like I said, getting Brandon Clark as an extra pick in this draft, they want him to be Draymond Green. Whether or not he is that guy, we won't know now. John Morant, I think there's the potential for him to put up stats this year, and I'll get into that a little bit in my bold predictions. But like I think there's potential for him to put up stats, but really have a pretty poor year overall. And the reason is because like the back end of this roster is just weird. Like Grayson Allen, I get you take him as a first round pick. He had a 40-point game in the NBA, but like he just doesn't appear to be very good. So it's not really a guy that like I'm excited about as a young guy. The other like young players they have to grow with Morant and Jaren Jackson and Brandon Clark, like these are the other like young guys who you could like think will be on the team, right? Dillon Brooks, I'm not super excited about that. Kyle Anderson's not super old, but again, like, does it feel like Kyle will be on the team if Ja and Jaren Jackson are really good in 3 or 4 years? He might be. And then it's like Josh Jackson, Ivan Rabb, and Bruno Caballo. Like they don't really have any other kind of pieces to build around. So I'm curious as to what their plan is for the next year or two. Because like you said, like this is probably going to be the worst team in the West, which is fine. They'll get a high draft pick, but like, are they just trying to move off of like Solomon Hill, Plumlee? We know they're trying to move off Iguodala and Jay Crowder. Like, are they just trying to get rid of those guys? Or they're like, whatever, we'll play them. Jonas Valanciunas the same way. And they'll just be like, whatever, we'll play them and try to win games while also trying to gain assets. Does that not seem odd to you?
Well, there's two like structural causes for concern. Like you kind of, I think like, because this team's not going to be good, whatever, you lose 60 games, who cares? But going forward, like, does the John Morant, Jaren Jackson, theoretically, they fit well together. They complement each other really well, I think, actually.
And Brandon Clark, for that matter. Like, and Brandon Clark.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. Like, so who are your other foundational pieces? Is there anyone else on the roster that's going to be here in 3 years?
Like I said, I think they feel very strongly about Dillon Brooks. I think they feel strongly about Kyle Anderson. And then I don't think there's an issue with, like, the Josh Jackson and Bruno Caballo lottery tickets. Like, if those guys end up being good, great. If they don't, whatever. It doesn't matter either,
Well, so, like, that's what I mean. Like, so structurally, right now, I do not see a wing player on this team that's going to be a starter in 3 years. Like, I don't think Dillon Brooks is that, honestly. Like, and Grayson Allen, I think those are like rotational players. Jay Crowder's, been overrated for a while. And then Kyle Anderson, I like, actually, is like a winning player, but he's like, he's best with the ball in his hands. I don't really see him fitting with John Morant for heavy minutes necessarily. And then my big question is inside. Like, they reinvested in Jonas Valanciunas.
Yeah, that seemed odd at the time.
And then you have Jaren Jackson Jr. and Brandon Clark. So who's like, how do they view Jaren Jackson Jr.? Like, because in my head, he's a great wingspan. He can block shots. He's a stretch big. I'd like to see him at the 5. And then you maybe even with Brandon Clark, because he's more of like a defender in the inside. But I think they might play him a lot with Valanciunas. I keep mispronouncing his name, but like, I don't know if that fit makes a ton of sense to me.
That seems bad, I think. And my assumption is that Coach Taylor Jenkins will ultimately end up with Jaren Jackson at the 5 a lot. So I do feel like their best. And again, this may just be because Brandon Clark is a little bit older. So if Brandon Clark is better out of the gates this year than people...
He's older than Jaren Jackson by a few years.
By like 3 years. Yeah, exactly. So saying that like, hey, Brandon Clark shouldn't be bad this year is not entirely true, in my opinion. Like, he should be ready to be more of a contributor, whether or not his ceiling is super high. Whereas, like, I think we agree well, I don't know. You don't love Jaren Jackson, but if Jaren Jackson is who people believe him to be, he could be a potential superstar for sure. But they should play Clark and Jackson together at the 4 and the 5, and then have it be like Ja. And that's the issue, like you said. Like, I don't know. I mean, they're gonna try with Grayson Allen. They're gonna try with Dylan Brooks. Kyle Anderson is like you said, a very good NBA player. I totally agree with that. But like, does he fit at the wing when you need more shooting? Maybe not. And I think that's going to be the issue with this team is like you need to get better at the wing spot because, like you said, like you don't want to be giving Solomon Hill and Jay Crowder tons of minutes. Like you need to play Bruno Caballo. You need to play Josh Jackson. And that's where I think the potential for this team to win like 21 games definitely exists, because I think that's what's going to end up happening is like you showcase your veterans early to hopefully move them for draft capital or something like that. And then you just play all your young guys and be like, hey, because in best case scenario, like which we always do, this is a team that just doesn't have a lot of bad scenarios. No matter really what happens this season, all you want to see is that Ja Morant and Jackson and Brandon Clark all look like the guys that you drafted them to be in the future. And if they do that and they win 19 games, like who really cares?
Right. No, totally. But I want to clarify, like my alleged Jaren Jackson Jr., you think I'm a hater on him. And same with Wendell Carter Jr. from last episode we talked about with Chicago. I think these are guys who get a little overrated based on the fact that they check boxes. You know, it's like you want a big guy with length. Okay, he checks that box. You want him to be able to shoot. He does check that box. That's great. Totally going to be a good starter in the NBA. There's no doubt about that. In terms of like that next level, like the superstar level, I just don't know about the mindset. Like, I think he fancies himself more of like a perimeter player than he probably should be offensively. And then defensively, like he's just like, he doesn't have like that, like, you know, fire in his ass, you know, like he last year, like for a guy with all his tools, 26 minutes a game, 4.7 rebounds for a guy who is like 7 foot, he's still growing. I just don't know how that's possible. So like, it's almost like, you know, the guy, he reminds me of like a guy like Jonathan Isaac, you know, all the tools in the world. Like when does that like superstar, I'm going to dominate you switch get flipped? I mean, it could happen. I mean, it's happened in the past, but there's also a chance he's just like content to be like the second or third best player on your team.
What if he's just like Al Harrington? No, not Al Harrington. That's a bad one. What if he's just like Jonathan Bender or like Anthony Randolph?
Yeah, and there's guys like, you know, like, hey, he could be like, let's say he's Al Horford's a slightly different player, but like an Al Horford type who's always like the second best player on a great team. That's fine. So I think the worst case scenario for Memphis is if he's sort of like a second or third best player on a team, and then Ja Morant is not the number one guy. Like he just think he's not efficient enough, whatever. He's turnover prone. And then you go around thinking maybe these two guys are not good enough to be the core of a playoff team. You need to hit on the lottery pick again to get like a third star.
Yeah, that was what I wrote about their worst case scenario. Because even like Ja looking not great, like the one guy that I think Morant gets compared to the most is John Wall, and I think there is some credence to that. He is for sure not as good of a finisher at the rim as John was at the same stage, and he's a little bit older. But Wall's first year with the Wizards, where he played with a group of just absolutely like knuckleheaded veterans, Wall was like 16, 8, and 4 or something, and shot like 41% from the field. And I think even given that season, if you saw it and you were like, okay, this guy was really inefficient. I want to say, I don't think he led the NBA in turnovers, but he averaged right around 4 a game and did have a lot. He got hurt at the end of that season. But I think if like that's what you see from Ja Morant and you do see some inefficiency, as long as the passing is what people believe it to be, even with the turnovers, I think there's a lot of reason to be excited about Ja Morant, even if he does have a bad year shooting the ball. Like if he shoots 36%, maybe it's a problem, you know, but John Wall shot 7% from 3 his second year in the NBA and still ended up becoming like a third team all NBA point guard. So Morant, I just think like, even if he turns it a ton and like they don't win a lot of games, like there's still, you have to watch him to see like, who is this guy?
And so I think you're Taylor Jenkins, your best friend, the guy that you text with all the time, you share game planning strategies with. I think you and he would agree that the barometer of success for this team has nothing to do with the record. It's all about, are these two guys young stars? Are these two guys truly guys we're going to build around? So if they do really well and the team wins 15 games, that's a great season. But if they look a little shaky and the team wins 35 games, that's a worse result. It's all about the progress of these two young stars.
Yeah, and I think Brandon Clark, people are excited about. And I think like that's the one where I think your expectations are going to be tempered a little bit because he's probably always going to be the fourth or fifth best player on the team if you're very good. But I agree with that. This, again, worst case scenario is mainly like you think Taylor Jenkins is just not the guy for the job, or like Jaren Jackson is just not good this year. And I think that's going to be hard to tell. Bold predictions. Here's what I got. I got two of them for you. I got Ja Morant over 8 assists per game and a lower than 40% field goal percentage on the season. I think his true shooting percentage will be fine. I think he'll get to the line, but I think he's going to really struggle because, like I said, he's just not a great finisher at the rim. Like, he gets a lot of credit for it, but in the OVC, like, he's so much more athletic. His body was so much different. I think he's really going to struggle with NBA size and length early. And then I think towards the end of the year, if we were looking at his splits, like, you'd see like, okay, he really started to finish. He started getting like his floater package a little bit. But I think with the jump shot struggles, I think he's going to struggle out of the gate and struggle to shoot 40%. And then the other, you like bold predictions. They traded for a guy named DeAnthony Melton. I am going out on a limb. I bet you DeAnthony Melton gets more than one vote for an all-defensive first team at the end of the season. Somebody's going to be like, this guy DeAnthony Melton's an unbelievable lockdown defender. And they're going to give him a vote for a defensive team, even though
more than one. So you're saying 2 votes.
Yes, I'm saying he gets 2 or more votes, like more than 1.5 votes for the NBA defensive first team.
I'd take that bet. That is bold, and that's deep. We talk about going into the weeds. We're deep in there now. Let me hack our way out with a kind of a safe prediction. I was just going to say I like Ja Morant's potential, but like it gets so inflated anytime you're a top 3 pick, and people think he's automatically going to be an all-star soon. It's so hard at point guard. It's so hard in the West. I think it's going to be a bumpy road. I think he's going to lead the league in turnovers, presuming he plays 70 games. I think he'll have over 4 turnovers a game.
Yeah, maybe. Trae Young might have something to say about that. And Harden and Westbrook are going to throw the ball around a ton, and we'll get to that. Okay, New Orleans Pelicans, everybody's favorite sleeper team, I guess. 33-49 last year. Over under on Bovada is 39, which I actually thought it was going to be higher than that, just to be totally honest. I'm not saying I agree with it or disagree with it, but I was surprised to not see it in the 40s. And I think that's because as we've done this show, that's gotten bet down a little bit. But I mean, I don't know. I thought they would be in the 40s. This is a good team, I think.
It's the most interesting team. Because it's like almost like we'll go over the roster because I was going to say it's almost like they merged 2 different rosters together and just threw them all together. It's like 2 teams like consolidated. Okay,
so I actually I wrote this in my notes, but they have a lot of talent. So I put for their starters, obviously, like people know, like Lonzo, Brandon Ingram, Josh Hart in, Zion in, Derek Favors in, Nickel Walker-Alexander they drafted, Jackson Hayes they drafted, JJ Redick signed there. And then the holdovers are like Etuan Moore, or they signed Nicolo Melli from the EuroLeague as well as a shooter. The holdovers, Etuan Moore, Jahlil Okafor, and Drew Holiday, and Frank Jackson. So I put like guess the starters because like I really don't know what they'll do because they're not super deep, and I think Zion needs to play the 5. But like my first shot at it, and this could be totally wrong, but my first shot at it was like Lonzo, Drew Holiday, Ingram, Zion, and Derek Favors. But like, if I told you that they started Josh Hart or JJ Redick or Etuan Moore, like that's definitely possible, right? Like the only 2 starters I'm sure of, right, is Drew and Zion are going to start. Do we have any idea who the other 3 are going to be?
No, and I think they're going to start Lonzo and Brandon Ingram just because they invested so much, and it's like a PR thing. Like if you wanted to make a biggest push as possible, maybe you would start JJ Redick, but I think they're going to start conservative. I think they're going to start with the young guys and try to get the chemistry going. And that sort of the great part and the concern of this team is like when I was saying that it's like they took 2 30-win teams and merged them together. And they legitimately have like 10 or 12 playable guys. I think it might be one of the deepest teams in the league.
And that's even if, real quick, that's even if you, like they're saying they're going to play Jahlil Okafor, and like we're not even including him in like the playable guys category. Or Jackson Hayes probably as a rookie.
Like their 10th to 12th guys are probably the best in the league, I think. And it's just like, how do you can only play so many. So how does it all fit together? And it's a mix of old and young, like JJ Redick with Zion Williamson. Like, how does that work? In terms of just like, how hard are you going for the playoffs or not? It's a very fascinating team. And, I think there's a high variance actually here. Like, I think Memphis is probably going to win like between, 20 to 30 games, let's say. New Orleans, if you told me they win 30 games, I wouldn't be shocked. If you told me they win 50 games, it wouldn't be out of the question.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Another like high variance team. And the reason being is like one, I don't think people realize like JJ Redick, obviously people know, like he's in the news a ton. He does his podcast, like he played for good Sixers teams, he played for good Clippers teams, but like JJ Redick's good. If I do you have the Pelicans thing open in front of you? Because I don't want you to look at it. I want you to tell me Drew Holiday's points per game, assists per game, and rebounds per game last season. I just want you to
I haven't looked it up. I would guess 22 points, 5 rebounds, 7 assists.
Yeah, 21, 7.5, and 5 last year on like tons of minutes.
I just nailed that, by the way. I did not.
Yeah, I mean, Drew Holiday is really good. And like, so even if you decide like, look, Nickeil Walker-Alexander is somebody like I'm very high on, but it's doubtful that he plays like a ton of awesome minutes this year because he's an NBA point guard as a rookie who's very young. Like he's gonna take some time. But Josh Hart, good NBA player. Lonzo, I think the jury's out, but like he's still a playable NBA guy and he might be very good. Brandon Ingram has a chance to be a very good player. Derek Favors, playable NBA guy. So it's like if Zion Williamson is truly a superstar, and it's going to be hard for him to be like I wanted to look this up and I just didn't, but it's going to be hard for him, I think, to be like a 23-12 guy to start and like really be the best player on the court. It may happen, but like that just doesn't happen all that often. And even like Blake Griffin, you know, obviously he missed the year and then came back, and I think he averaged like 20 and 11 right away or something. But even like LeBron was like a 25-5 guy as like a 19-year-old. So it's going to be hard for Zion to be a superstar. But if he is, you're right. This is a really good team. The problem is they probably
I'll go one step further. Zion, you know, I agree. He's a rookie. Like, keep it in mind, he's a young rookie. As you mentioned, Blake Griffin was 2 years older when he was a rookie.
Yep.
But if you switch Zion out and put LeBron James on this team, like this is the team that could win the title. Like that's how good this team is.
Yeah, for sure.
So it is like the ceiling. It does depend on like how good is Zion going to be out of the gate, and they don't necessarily need him to be LeBron or even Blake Griffin right now. But if he is even a good starter, like that's hard for a rookie to do. So if he's a good starter, then this could be a playoff team.
It's very ironic that we said that too, because LeBron shipped out 3 of these guys and it just didn't work with him. But like, I agree with your sentiment that like like this year, for example, and this is one of my bold predictions, is that Zion does average 18 and 10 and plays like 60% of his minutes as a small ball 5. Because I really do think that's the best role for him. But if you see that from him, it makes total sense why this team is built the way it is. Because like JJ Redick doesn't have a lot of years left. Like Derek Favors is a younger guy, but like his peak is probably behind him. Brandon Ingram, like you might have to pay that dude. Like Lonzo, you're probably going to have to pay him if he's good. But like if Zion is good right away, like this team is a title contender next year. And that's just the bottom line. Because I don't even think – I wrote their best case scenario was like they win 48 games and like they're the 7 seed and they have a chance to win a game in the first round. But they strike me very similarly to like, you know, I think I said this with Sacramento before who did I say was like the old Oklahoma City Thunder? I honestly can't remember, but it's like where you remember what I'm saying? Like you lose in the first round to like a very good team, and then all of a sudden they're like, holy crap, like this team is a sleeping giant. And I think I was talking about Sacramento when I said that, but that's kind of what I think maybe the best case scenario for this team is, because I definitely don't think they're good enough right away, but I also don't think it's a failure. Like their worst case scenario is, in my opinion, it's one thing. And that's that Zion Williamson is not good. That's it. Even if he's awesome and they win 30 games, I think it's a great season for them.
I don't even think it's possible for him not to be good, in the sense like it's going to be very hard for him to meet expectations. But in terms of being a productive, good NBA player, I think it's almost impossible for him not to be that. Unless one thing is, I do worry about injuries.
Right, and his body is not great.
Yeah, his body and just how hard he plays and how many hits he takes and his landings. It's very possible he misses 30 games this year and then 20 games next year. And then that's sort of the wrap on him, like that sort of unfulfilled potential.
And they're obviously going to be very cautious with him as well. Because like, here's the thing. He signed a big money deal with Jumpman. Like he's obviously the number 1 overall pick. He's going to get a ton of other money and endorsements. But like if Zion Williamson has a high ankle sprain in game number 12, like you better believe he's out for 2 to 3 weeks, if not more. Like there's no way the Pelicans are risking like Zion and his brand, even on the business side, for what it means for the Pelicans. Like there's no way he's getting hurt in a season that they're chasing 43 wins. And like that shit's just not happening.
You know, it's terrifying to think of this as a possibility, but remember when Andrew Luck retired, which seems shocking to say even still, we were like, what's the comparison, NBA comparison? It would be like somebody like Joel Embiid retiring or something like that. That's like the worst case scenario for Zion, is that like he's constantly injury prone, never fulfills his potential. And then, it's one of those great, like, what ifs, like, what if he stayed healthy? And to that end, like, practically speaking, like, that fear would keep me up at night, and would also, if I'm the team, not only rest him as much as possible, but in games, like, he's the kind of player like Blake Griffin who should not be playing 36 minutes a night. He should be playing, try to keep him down around 32 and just conserve his energy, because like big guys like that do get worn down. And living in LA, I watched it so often with the Clippers. Blake Griffin would go hard as hell and then would look absolutely exhausted by the end of the game. So like, I think you gotta pace yourself.
Well, I think the problem too is like you're giving a worst case scenario for his career, because even this season, if he plays 45 games and they're cautious with him, but he looks good in 45 games, like nobody thought Greg Oden's first season was like an ominous thing, really. Like they were like, oh, he looked really good when he played, and then all of a sudden, like his career was just done with injuries. So even that this year, like it's probably not the worst thing. But I will say, like, it is very obvious that the Pelicans feel very strongly about the fact that Zion is going to be a big time superstar, as you have to feel when you draft him 1 overall. And that's why this team is the way it is. I think they're not deep enough in the front court, and I think that's the next move for them.
Yeah, I have a worst case scenario, because I agree. Like Zion getting hurt, whatever. Maybe he loses Rookie of the Year if he misses too much time.
Yeah, it's not.
I think the worst case is if the Lakers players they got, specifically Lonzo and Brandon Ingram, if they're just not good. Like they're like, look, these guys are not moving the needle at all. I don't really want to pay Brandon Ingram for his inefficiency, and Lonzo. I mean, there's a real chance right now, I think, that Lonzo is not a starting player, and this is a kind of team where there's going to be potentially better players sitting behind him, like in Etuan Moore, for example. People don't talk about. He's a guy who shot 43% last year and plays good defense. Like Lonzo, if they're making a playoff push, you have to justify, why are we playing Lonzo over like an Etuan Moore type?
Especially because you can play Drew at multiple guard spots and even go small around him, because he's such a good defender as well. So like, I don't totally agree with that. And because that's the thing, like if Brandon Ingram justifies being paid, the Pelicans are going to just happily pay him.
And even if they're not, though, I mean, there's a fear of like an Andrew Wiggins situation where like we've invested so much in this guy, might as well pay him $20 million a year and hope it works out.
But he's a restricted. They have his restricted free agency rights anyway. But my point is like if Brandon Ingram is good, they're going to happily pay him. Is all I'm saying.
No, totally. And I like Brandon. I'm like still like stubbornly thinking he's going to be a very good player. And in terms of his size, and he moves the ball well. I think he fits Zion. And I think Lonzo moves the ball well. And Drew, it could, like, you could see this team being an up tempo, run and gun,
and good defensively. You could see them being really good defensively. So we'll see. It's Alvin Gentry's job to like get him to fit together. Because like I said, I do think they're thin in the front court, but I think part of the reason is because like Zion's going to play a lot of minutes at the 5. Here's my bold predictions. Like I said, Zion 18-10 this year. I do think he's going to win Rookie of the Year. If you can still get it at plus value, I probably would get it at that. And just if he doesn't get hurt, he's going to win. And then like I said, I think he plays 60% of his minutes at the 5. The other really kind of like bold prediction, and I don't know if I can really go out on this limb or not, but the Pelicans are not on national TV a lot. And this year they're going to be on national TV a ton. Like they're like the 5th most televised team. Is this year people really figure out that like Drew Holiday is actually an awesome NBA player? And can he build like a 3rd-team all NBA narrative around himself if the team is good?
I think David Griffin, it struck me like the new president said that they think Drew Holiday is like an MVP candidate.
He's good, man. He's not that good, but he's good.
No, he's good. If they make the playoffs, he's going to make all NBA, some team, 3rd team. I think
that was my other prediction is like Drew Holiday.
And media people love him. He has a good story. He's a good kid. He does everything on the court. I really like him. I certainly. And it just bums you out in a way, because it's like, remember, Anthony Davis demanded a trade, and they won the lottery, and he still demanded a trade. But Drew Holiday, Zion, and Anthony Davis together
would have been great. Would have been fun.
I mean, not only the fit makes a lot of sense, the style would be amazing. It would just be so electric. They could be title contenders in a couple of years too. And it's just, I wonder, Anthony Davis landed on his feet, of course, but he could have stayed in New Orleans and been a hometown hero if he stayed.
Yeah, but Anthony Davis is lame, and we know that. If he just plays for the U.S. in the World Cup, they probably win with him at the 5 spot. But anyway, go on.
My bold prediction, we maybe overhyped this kid, but Nickeil Alexander-Walker, the like the forgotten first round pick of theirs out of Virginia Tech. I just really like him. He's exactly what I want in a guard, especially a guard with a superstar like Zion Williamson. He can shoot pretty well. He's long armed. He's not a great defender, but he's long enough to like guard a few different spots. Cousins of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I think he's going to have a better career than Kobe White, who is a top 10 pick for the Bulls. And I'm almost tempted to say he's going to have a better career than Lonzo Ball. Like, I just trust like the natural transition. If he doesn't get buried, there's a chance he gets buried and then he's out of the league in 3 years because he never got the chance to show anything. But if I'm building a team, like I don't see a big difference between him and Kobe White. And I think he's going to have a better career if given the chance. He's in a great situation here in New Orleans. I think he's going to be a good 10-year player in the NBA.
All right. League pass rating. They're an A, I think, obviously, Zion. We actually didn't do Memphis. I had Memphis as a B, just Ja Morant, Brandon Clark, B-, weird stuff there. But Pelicans, A. Like I said, Zion, everyone wants to see about the Lakers.
I'll give him an A+. I mean, like, if you had to watch any team first night, you might even pick New Orleans just to see Zion.
Well, the good news is they're on TV the first night as the Lake game on TNT, so you'll be able to see him. Guys, we got to take a quick break. If you like our show, you're going to love the Jordan Harbinger Show on Podcast One. This week, Jordan joins former NBA Lakers superstar and Oscar Award winner Kobe Bryant for an unforgettable conversation that you don't want to miss. Check out the Jordan Harbinger Show every week on Apple Podcasts and Podcast One. And now, back to the Southwest Division. All right. Dallas Mavericks, another team that I think has a large variance of outcomes, and I'm excited to watch. They were 33-49 last year. Their over-under on Bovada is 40.5, so Vegas does feel that they're going to be better than the Pelicans, which is quite interesting. Obviously, Luka and Porzingis, they traded for Porzingis midseason last year. He is supposedly fully healthy. They got Tim Hardaway Jr. in that deal as well. They signed DeLone Wright. They signed Seth Curry. And then they signed Boban, the rest of the team, Dwight Powell, Jalen Brunson, JJ Barea, Dorian Finney-Smith, Justin Jackson, Maxi Kleber. I think my first shot at their starting lineup is Wright, Tim Hardaway Jr., Luka. Porzingis at the 4 seems to be what they're going to do from everything I've read, and then Dwight Powell at the 5. But your thoughts on this team and this roster?
Yeah, well, just overview. You talk about Bovada. Like, I'm not surprised. Like, both Dallas and New Orleans, similar over under 39, 40 wins. And you thought that was low for New Orleans. I thought it was, pretty optimistic because you remember Sacramento was like the darling story and they won 39 games last year. It's not easy to win 40 games in the West.
That's true. But I do also think that both of these teams are more talented than Sacramento was at the start of last year.
That's probably true. But Sacramento is the team that just fit like a glove, I think, like their stars really aligned well. And so these are two new teams trying to figure out some new pieces, particularly Porzingis in Dallas. And I think that's the variance. Like, is Porzingis going to play 65, 70 games, which I think they'd be fine with even. Because on paper, he fits really well with Doncic. I don't know if you're getting that. How can you be confident?
I talked about this before, definitely during free agency. Like, I didn't quite understand what Dallas did. Like, it obviously, of course, when you trade Porzingis and give up what they did, and you take back Tim Hardaway, like, you're paying Porzingis. So, like, that is totally fine. Like, I had no problem with that deal. I do think at fully healthy, like, I love what Kristaps Porzingis can be. I love what we've seen so far as a guy who can protect the rim, who can make threes. Like, I think the guy's a monster. Off the court stuff is a little concerning. His brother is a little bit concerning to me. And I think Luka is the guy in Dallas. So I worry, like you said, the on-court fit could be really good. We don't know how they get along off the court. But I don't understand why Dallas won't play him at the 5. Like, they legitimately gave new contracts to 2 guys that are all 100% 5 men, plus paid Luka and then paid Maxi Kleber, who's going to be a 4. But it's like, why do you have so much front court depth when, like, probably the blueprint for Luka is, yes, he can be a 3. You can also play him at the 4, but he's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. So, like, why you're going to be big to begin with? Like, why is Porzingis just not going to be their 5 man, Zan? Like, why are they paying Dwight Powell? Like, why are they paying Boban? Like, why are they paying Maxi Kleber? Like, why wouldn't they go get more wings? And I know you need depth because it is Porzingis, don't get me wrong, and all those deals in the vacuum are fine. They were like 3-year deals or 2-year deals, but it feels like if you're playing Porzingis at the 4, it feels kind of weird, It feels like a weird fit to me.
Well, it's almost like Memphis in a way, because I think they view Porzingis almost like Jaren Jackson Jr., where it's like you're this stretch big man who's not going to bang down low. So Dwight Powell is your Brandon Clark, maybe, and just like garbage man inside.
But to be totally clear, I will say this, and I understand your analysis, and I agree with it. What we've seen of Kristaps Porzingis is a superstar. Like, that guy's a super. We haven't seen it from Jaren Jackson yet, in my opinion. We have seen it from Porzingis on a terrible Knicks team.
Maybe they don't think Porzingis is going to play more than 65.
That was my thought too, is that they just don't want to beat him up like that because he's had such a hard time staying healthy.
Right. And, even the Lakers talking about that with Anthony Davis, like maybe these thin big men, they don't want to play 82 games down low, and they're trying to save him for the playoffs. Because certainly in the playoffs, you would play him at the 5 if they make it that far. It's such a good coaching staff that you think the best, but if Porzingis plays 50, 60 games, I don't see any way they win 40 games personally.
Yeah, this is the best case scenario, I think. And I will tell you why I'm not super bullish on this in my worst case scenario. But obviously, like Luka, rookie of the year last year, he was great. He struggled down the stretch playing a super high workload, but obviously their roster wasn't really great around him, and they traded Harrison Barnes away. And, so, but if Luka takes a jump to MVP and you get 70 games of like legitimate Kristaps Porzingis, this team could really throw a wrench in the Western Conference playoff picture, I don't think they're good enough to win the title, obviously. I do think they're good enough if those guys are legitimately awesome the entire year. The depth is there, in my opinion. They do have shooting. Like, they do have guys that can guard. They have some scorers as opposed to those two. So if those two are legitimately great all year, this team could win 50 games. I totally see it. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Luka is closer to his peak than people think. He's played a ton of minutes. Yes, he can get into shape. Yes, he can make more shots. Yes, he can get more comfortable in the NBA. But I think the guy that we've seen is a guy that we've seen for a lot of years. And I think he's better than Jason Tatum personally, because I think the playmaking is better, but I don't think there is as big of a jump for Luka Doncic to make as people think. And that's why,
how dare you?
Well, he could be a 23-5-5 guy for his whole career. He could be a 23-8-5 guy in terms of like assists to rebounds, as far as I'm concerned. But like, unless he gets a lot more efficient or he takes a way bigger workload, a la James Harden, like, the guy we saw last year, he maybe just is more consistent as the year goes and he's better. But I don't know if I really, really, truly see like league MVP, best player in the league upside from Luka Doncic. I think he probably is not that guy. That's what I think personally.
Well, you always thought that. Look, I'm mixed, because you look on paper, you're like,
he's good, man.
Average 21, 8, and 6 as a rookie, 19-year-old rookie. Obviously, he could get up to 25, 8 and 8. It's possible.
Definitely. He's really good. I'm not saying that he's not really good. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's always this guy's crushing Luka. Like, I'm really not.
No, but I understand your point, because look, he shot less than 33% from 3 last year. Didn't shoot that well in the Euro League either. So I don't know if he's a great shooter. I think he's an average shooter. 71% from the line. I think that'll get better. So the efficiency will get better. But he was in such a position to max out his stats last year. Like, and they wanted him to be rookie of the year. They wanted him to be the face of the franchise. There was no real other true talent on the roster. There's no Kristaps Porzingis to feed. So he was sort of like in the best case scenario in terms of like rack up as many raw stats as you can. That should naturally go down a little bit, that opportunity on a better team. So, like if you put him on, I don't know who's a good team, Philadelphia or something like that, he wouldn't have done what he did last year in the raw stats. So I agree. I think, but isn't that enough? For this team to like get where they want to go, do they need him to be an MVP? I don't necessarily think so.
Let me ask you a question. If I told you today, you could bet me Luka Doncic over under 0.5, or just will he make the All NBA first team one time in his career?
Yes, I think so.
You 100%. Think he will? Okay, so we're a little bit mixed on that.
Well, you're seeing even third team or first team?
No. All NBA first team, not an All NBA team.
Yeah, I thought you meant second or third.
No. All NBA first team. Will Luka make the All NBA first team one time in his career?
I probably would still bet yes, just because I'm thinking like, LeBron's going to age out, Durant's going to age out, Kawhi's going to get injured in 2 months. Um, I so I
Kawhi
think
might
he
make
like
the All NBA first team playing
well,
for
and he's got
5
like a
games.
window of like 10 years to do it, so it's possible, if not longer. And also, he is like a media darling. So if Dallas ever wins 50 games, like he'll get all the credit for it. So I think he will. I don't see, I think he has MVP potential even. Like it's possible. But you can't rule it out. He's one of those players you could average, 38 and 8 and they win 55 games and he's MVP clearly. I think most likely, you know,
James
if
Harden. James Harden did that last year, and his team won 53 games, and he didn't win MVP. By the way.
well, if Luka had done that, he would have won MVP.
You're right. So, what's the worst case scenario then? Like,
For this team or for him.
No, for this team.
I think it's again injuries. Like, and look, here's some sobering stats about Kristaps Porzingis. He's been in the league 4 years. Average games played per year is 46. And if you take out last year for whatever reason, you don't think that's fair to include, it's 62. So I don't know where you see that he's playing 70, 75 games a year. And he's never had to play in the playoffs either. So how does he hold up? I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. Also, though, I will say with his injuries, obviously the one ACL, then he had like a back injury. So it's different injuries, and that tends to be guys like not labeled as like, oh, these are freak things. Remember like Kevin Love with like the broken kneecap or whatever, and then he had like a back injury, but Kevin Love ended up playing a lot of games. And I think Anthony Davis, that's why I always worry about him, because he's just had a bunch of different injuries. It's just like always something, and that may be who Porzingis ends up kind of similarly profiling out to be. With just like, he breaks a finger or like, he twists an ankle or he like gets a concussion. Like he just seems like that type of guy. I do think their worst case scenario is that like Luka just doesn't take a big jump and Porzingis has soft eyes. Shout out to Dan Doctor. Like my thing is like, if Luka isn't a superstar, like if he isn't a true number one option, are they going to be willing to be like, hey, Porzingis is that guy? And I don't know that he is either. Like, do they have two like 1B type guys? And can you win a title with two 1B type guys?
I see. That's why I don't think it matters as much as you, because it's not a set product, and they not coincidentally cleared a lot of cap room in the future. So if Luka is good, let's say he's an all-star, borderline all-star. Let's say Kristaps Porzingis is a borderline all-star. It's a conspiracy theory that I would float again. Like, is this not an ideal situation for a star like Giannis to come on and be like the final piece of the puzzle?
No, you're right. You love this conspiracy. I don't think it's going to happen because, again,
but I mean, just like riddle me this, Batman. You're Giannis. It's 2 years down the future. Chris Middleton is 30. Eric Bledsoe's 32. You've kind of maxed out in Milwaukee. Meanwhile, you look at Dallas, Doncic and Porzingis are like 22, 23, 24. And they fit you skill wise. They could take some pressure off you. I mean, isn't that a very appealing situation?
It is. If you it is. Yes, it is. Here's the problem. Mark Cuban hitches his wagon to one guy. He has done it. He did it with Dirk for years, and then he got Dirk the help that he needed. Does Mark Cuban want to bring in Giannis over Luka? Like Luka is like his new guy. Like that's the thing. Like I just don't see the fit. Like.
Well, I would say it's like this. It's like Luka's our guy in the same way that Dwayne Wade was Miami's guy. But hey, we'll still bring in a better player if we can.
Okay, great. You're right about that. But the issue is that
Kevin Durant and Steph Curry, same situation where the better player comes in is not quite the face of the franchise. Boom. 2 examples in recent years.
Yeah, here are 2 reasons why those examples are total like crap. One, LeBron, Wade, and Bosh conspired to do the big 3 thing. The 3 of them did that. We don't know that Giannis and Luka and Porzingis are close at all. So that Pat Riley got it done, but LeBron and Wade did that themselves, right? That was a Wade and LeBron production, a Spring Hill production, if you will. Then Durant actually fits with everybody. Like you put Durant on any team in the league and he can be Kevin Durant. We don't know if Giannis can do that, especially if Luka's going to be a 35% possession type guy, which he is going to be. That's who he is.
But couldn't Giannis just won 60 games with Brook Lopez as center.
Brook Lopez just made the World Cup team. Are you telling me?
No, I like Brook Lopez. I like it, and he shoots threes well. You know who else is a big man who shoots threes well? Does he not fit with Porzingis?
No, Giannis probably fits with everyone. I'm telling you that I don't think it's as a done deal. I don't think it's a situation.
No, I don't think it's a done deal, of course. But I'm just getting to the point being, this team has enough upside and wiggle room that even if Luka Doncic is just an all-star, like there's still moves to make. And maybe it's not Giannis. Maybe it's
correct. You're right.
Whomever, even like whatever, say Brandon Ingram's an all-star and they add Brandon Ingram. It's another player. They could find a third player.
It seems more unlikely to me that they would add a super high usage guy next to Luka because he's going to be the high usage guy in Dallas for 15 years. And he just has to have the ball. Like he's so much better with the ball in his hands. Like
that's true. But like say like Bradley Beal, whoever.
Bradley Beal. That's good.
Thompson, whatever. Anyone else who's
But yeah, those you're right. All of these deals are on like 2 to 3 year shelf lives where like they can make another move. Like 100%. You're right about that. How about this? Luka for Giannis, who says no? Like, I mean, especially if Milwaukee thinks Giannis is leaving and
that's a great question. But here's the relevant question for this year. Cause I thought this was the most interesting like toss up, and especially in this division. Dallas versus New Orleans this year, similar over win totals. They had the same record last year. I was really torn on this. Like, who would you take? I have a slight preference, but I'm not sold. So you can convince me.
Yeah, I had kind of put off like ranking how I think the division was going to finish. I was going to put Houston first and Memphis last, and I wasn't really sure because I honestly could see any of these teams being second, third, or fourth, including San Antonio, who we'll talk about. But I think that New Orleans is going to be slightly worse than Dallas because I think Dallas is going to try to win more games than I think New Orleans is okay being like, hey, if this year we don't make the playoffs, that's fine. I think Dallas is trying to make the playoffs this year. And I think Rick Carlisle is going to coach that way, whereas I think Alvin Gentry and David Griffin might play a little bit of a longer game. Like with Dallas, I don't think they would make a deal for like future picks if somebody was like, hey, we really want, I don't even know. Like, so let's say somebody said like, hey, we really want Justin Jackson. He's playing well for us. I don't know that Dallas would do it. Whereas if like somebody came to New Orleans and was like, hey, we really want Derek Favors, like here's a late first, like they would do that in a second. They would sacrifice some of their short-term wins for longer-term wins. But like, I think both these teams are pretty good. I think they're better than people think too.
And I wouldn't be shocked to see like JJ Redick end the season on like the Lakers or something like
that. That's exactly right. Like, and that's the point. Like, I don't like Mark Cuban's not moving Seth Curry. Like they drafted these guys to win games starting this year with Porzingis rounding back into form.
Yeah, and that's why I'm so torn on it. And also I think the fit right now is a little cleaner. I don't know if it's a better fit, but it's just like, I think they know what they want to do. They have a more limited rotation. We talked about New Orleans having like 12 guys to figure out how to fit.
And you're probably right in the sense that like New Orleans, probably their ceiling is higher if they can get everything to fit together. And if like Lonzo and Brandon Ingram are good and Josh Hart is good and Drew Holiday is good, like they have probably a higher ceiling. Whereas like with Dallas, like that, you're right. Like they've slotted guys into their spots. They have less to figure out than New Orleans.
And there's more like, there's more method to the madness. I feel like they're going to inch forward. It's just a matter of like, how fast is it going to get better? Whereas New Orleans, maybe they win 30 games and fire their coach. Like we don't know. Like Dallas at least has like sort of the track in front of them.
So bold predictions, right? I'm wondering how quickly into the season we get a meeting with, Porzingis' brother and Mark Cuban. I think it's 30 games.
Oh my gosh.
I think there's a rather high chance of like people are talking about like Houston having the biggest like personality problems. I think there is a very good chance that we look back on this Dallas thing and we're like, man, like can anybody play with Porzingis? Like I think his camp and like the way that they view him and himself now that he's gotten paid, it's kind of like a prove it type situation, and we know that New York had grown tired of him. We know there was some off court stuff that, we don't know the truth behind, but we know that his brother's difficult and we know that his brother has made things harder for him in the past. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how they do. Cause like Luka is clearly the future here. Like he is option 2 on the Mavs. That is very clear to me.
I'd go the other way. I'm going to be optimistic on this as much as I talked about Porzingis' injury issue. I think this team has some experience with Dirk and managing and they're smart. They're a forward thinking franchise. I think they're going to treat him like we would want to treat like Embiid and like, or they treated Kawhi Leonard last year in Toronto. Like, let's play him 65 games a year. Just manage him, even if regardless of the playoff chase, because it is a long-term plan here to some degree. I think they want to make the playoffs this year, but it would be a failure if they don't make it in the following year. I think it's at least a 2-year plan. So I think they're going to play him limited minutes. I think he'll be effective in that role. And I agree. I think Luka is going to have sort of like a little bit of a plateau, like Jason Tatum last year. Like there's always this overinflated expectations for these sophomores. But I think they, is that my bold prediction? The Giannis thing. I do think they're going to sign Giannis eventually.
You keep going with these
based
bold
on
predictions.
very little. It's very, not much there, to be honest.
You keep going on these bold predictions that have nothing to do with this season. Here's my last one. I do buy into Justin Jackson. I think that it was a smart deal for them. He's a longer wing shooter. I think he's going to shoot. He shot 37% with Dallas last year in a better offensive system than he was in Sacramento, just for him personally. I think his only role is going to be to make threes. I think he's going to shoot 40% from three. And I think we're going to see a situation where Justin Jackson ends up playing a lot more minutes than people think at one of the wing spots. Because again, like with Luka having the ball so much, I think it's very necessary for guys like Seth Curry and Justin Jackson, and even like, your JJ Bareas of the world to like make open shots. And so I think it was a smart deal to get a guy like Justin Jackson.
Do you want me to only do bold predictions? Because I have another bold prediction for you.
Go for it.
2038, Texas withdraws from the Union, becomes their own country. And I think Luka will be the president of the Texan Basketball League. What do you think of that?
All right, league pass rating. You're an idiot. League pass rating. I do think this, as I tend to do, trend a little bit more negative. I want people to know, like, I'm actually pretty bullish on Dallas. Like, I'm excited to watch them. Like, for me, it's a B+, A-. Like, I want to see what Luka does in year two. I really like Porzingis. He's a guy that I'm super, super high on. So I just am saying, like, there's some chance that, like, this kind of thing doesn't work. And, like, if it doesn't work, like, is Rick Carlisle the scapegoat? And that's what I'm kind of watching. I don't think they're going to fire him. I think his relationship with Cuban is really good. But I want people to see that, like, there's another side of this Luka-Porzingis pairing that may not work. But I am very bullish on them. I think they'll be very fun to watch. And I think you're right.
Well, it's interesting not to be like, San Antonio had such a stable organization because they had a lot of on the backing of these international stars who are like team first buy-in guys.
And as far as Europeans go, and they had Tim Duncan.
Right. As far as Europeans go, Luka and Porzingis are not necessarily that template. Like, they are more volatile. They have their own agendas. I think it's going to be tough. I don't think like Carlisle is totally safe, as you said. But for New Orleans and Dallas, they're so similar in terms of like they're knocking on the door of the playoffs. But if we did East and West previews instead of the divisions, like the West is like, there's not that many spots open at the party, there's not that many tickets to be handed out, especially with the Lakers getting better. It's like our next team may be the 8th seed and they're going to win 45 plus games.
Yeah. So San Antonio, 48-34 last year. Over under on Bovada is 46.5. They just win 45 plus games every single year. Like it just really happens. Like, this roster is actually kind of interesting, although the fit is a little bit weird. They certainly play differently than almost every team in the NBA in the sense that, like, they were 7th in offense last year and they shot the most mid-range jumpers in the NBA. So, but DeJounte Murray back from injury, Derek White presumably into the starting lineup, still DeMar DeRozan, still Rudy Gay, still LaMarcus Aldridge, Patty Mills off the bench, Bryn Forbes, Alani Walker, they're excited about this year. Marco Bellinelli's back. They signed Damari Carroll. They signed Trey Lyles. And then they have Keldon Johnson and Lucas Samanic as guys that will probably play in the G League, and still have Jakob Poeltl. So not a whole lot of change on this group that won 48 games last year.
Yeah, and that's so amazing. It's like not quite Belichick, but it's close in the sense that Popovich has been the coach for over 20 years. The 47 games they won 2 years ago, 48 last year, was the worst 2 records since his first year.
Yeah, 50 wins every single season except for his first season. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
But I do think maybe this is the new normal for them. They won 47, then 48. I can't imagine, like, they're not a 60-win team anymore. They're not even necessarily a 50-win team anymore, unless you think getting DeJounte Murray back is going to be a huge game changer.
Yeah, I think because, and we don't know how he looks. Like, he tore his ACL. We missed the entire season. He's not a good shooter. Was like just a terrible shooter. The one thing that this team really does seem to lack, and again, Lonnie Walker may turn out to be like a big-time wing scorer. Maybe Keldon Johnson is in the future, but like DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge are going to give you exactly what they've given you the last 2 years. Now, they've made DeMar play more of the 3. They've played LaMarcus Aldridge at the 5. Like, that's where they play now. You're going to get contributions from them. Derek White was great to end the season. He was pretty good with Team USA, but like, if you play Murray, DeMar, Rudy Gay, and Aldridge together, like, you're playing pretty slow again, and you're not a great defensive lineup, although I do think their defensive backcourt's going to be really good. So I don't really know. Like, you said, like, this isn't a 60-win team, and I agree with that, but, like, maybe they could win 55 to 58 games and just, like, because they're going to be really solid on offense, and they should be a lot better on defense. I think they were 17th last year defensively.
Right. That's what I was going to say. You read my mind, because it's so interesting, because you think, like, look,
they were 19th. They were 19th in defense. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, like that, my point was, like, you think, like, how did they win 48 games last year? Because DeRozan and Aldridge are pretty good, not amazing. You think, oh, it must have been their defense must have been good, and it's not true. I mean, 19th in defense, 7th in offense. So it's odd. I mean, you think that, like, you'd flip that in my head? I would have guessed. And the year before, it was flipped: 17th on offense, 3rd in defense. So is DeJounte Murray that good of a defender that he could take them back into the top 10? Maybe. He is a very good perimeter defender.
I was stunned to see. I knew they were good on offense because obviously there was a bunch of articles and stuff written about it. I watched them a good bit last year. Like, I was totally stunned to see where they ranked defensively last year. And part of that's, again, because, you know, it's DeMar, it's LaMarcus Aldridge, like those, Rudy Gay, like, they're not great defenders. They play a lot of minutes. Patty Mills plays a lot of minutes for them. Bryn Forbes plays a lot of minutes. Like, those guys are not good defenders. But Derek White and DeJounte Murray are both excellent defenders. I think DeMarre Carroll, they expect to be a good defender. Jakob Poeltl has been a good defender in his career. He was not last year. Like, this is a team that is going to be more offensive oriented. And again, the only thing I wrote in their best case scenario is that I just don't think this team can win the title. Like, they're just, to me, they're just not quite good enough. They may be very good. They'll win a ton of games.
Not quite. Wow. You're a lot higher on them than I am, because I would say I don't think this team could win a series. I mean, I know they almost did last year.
Well, so I did put that as, I'm just saying in the best case scenario. Like, I don't envision, like, if they won in the first round, like, it wouldn't stun me. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, this team, Pop is too good. Like, but they're not making any moves. Like, this is going to be their roster. I do have one kind of really bold take on their roster, but I just don't see it. Like, I don't see 55 wins. Like, DeMar is really good. LaMarcus Aldridge is really good. I'm very high on Derek White. I really like Lonnie Walker. I really like Patty Mills. But, like, is that team beating, like, LeBron? And then, like, is he beating the Clippers? And then are they turning around and beating Giannis? Like, it just doesn't seem likely to me, because I think they're going to struggle to get stops against wing players. They just don't have a wing defender that, like, can really stop guys. And that's what you need in the playoffs.
I think part of the issue for them last year was, like, they had to play a little smaller, I think.
Right.
And they did try. I mean, you got DeMarre Carroll, Trey Lyles, you know, Keldon Johnson's, you know, kind of a thicker wing, I guess. So I think they'll have more size. They'll have some versatility. I just worry about the upside. Like, how is this team going to forget winning the title? How are they going to win a round? They could get lucky, puncher's chance, good coaching. I don't see any scenario where they win 2 rounds. I don't even know how it's possible, because, I mean, we've seen DeMar DeRozan, we've seen DeMarcus Aldridge. These guys are maxed out.
And well, keep in mind too, like, they had to have a ton of injuries. But, like, I would say this, like, Lonnie Walker, to me, is the most important player on their roster. And I understand that, like, his production may not be good, but, like, they need to see, like, hey, we drafted this guy as a big time wing who's going to score. Like, we need to kind of move this forward, right? Because obviously, like, Derek White's going to be there, DeJounte Murray's going to be there, Lonnie's going to be there. They like Keldon Johnson, but he probably won't play a lot this year. They like Lucas Samanik. He probably won't play a lot this year either. Like, so they need, who's the next guy for the Spurs? Because, like, there's a shelf life on DeMar, Rudy Gay, LaMarcus, Trey Lyles, DeMarre Carroll. Like, those guys just aren't going to be there forever. Patty Mills, like, so Lonnie Walker, it's like, all right, if we see that Lonnie Walker's good, then maybe you feel really good about the future. But if Lonnie Walker, like, doesn't really take a step this year, and they struggle again offensively, and you need to rely a ton on DDR and LaMarcus, like, I think that's a tough thing. Like, that's why I think the worst case scenario for them is, like, the offense regresses beyond a lack of, like, 3-point shooting. Like, Lonnie's still a year away. They struggle to create space playing DeJounte and Derek White together, which means you have to play Patty Mills and Bryn Forbes a lot more. And then the old guys just kind of look a lot older. And I think, like, Pop just decides he's done and he wants to retire. So I think, like, and they missed the playoffs. Like, and again, they can miss the playoffs in 44 games.
I agree. Like, upside wise, like, you know, maybe we're dwelling on this defensive stats, but it's shocking. Like, this is their defensive rating from 2012-13. Okay. Starting then, 3rd best. Next year, 3rd best. Next year, 2nd best. Next year, 1st. Year after that, 1st. 3rd. Last year, 19th. So it's like, it's just, like, stunning. And, like, so the path forward to, like, best case scenario is to regain a top 5 defense, let's say, and win 50 games. But I agree with you. I think my big question for you is going to be worst case scenario. is there a good chance, let's say 30+% chance, that this team misses the playoffs?
Yeah, 30% for sure, I think. And they can miss the playoffs and win 45 games still. Like they could hit their over-under and conceivably miss the playoffs. So if they win 47 games, I guess they got in. But they could definitely miss the playoffs. They could finish fourth in this division. Like that could I could see it happening. I don't think it'll happen. I think they'll be better than Sacramento. I think they'll be better than New Orleans. I don't know if they'll be better than Dallas. I don't know about that. But I think they'll be better than Sacramento and New Orleans for this season. But here's what I have. Here's my two bold predictions. Number one, Greg Popovich wins a gold medal with Team USA and retires as the Spurs head coach.
That's not this year. You got to interrupt me for that. That's not this.
No, it is. Well, okay, yeah. So this would be it because obviously the Olympics are next summer. So bold prediction, this is Greg Popovich's last season as the San Antonio Spurs head coach. Here's the second part of this bold prediction. This is part 2 of bold prediction 1. Brett Brown, head coach of the San Antonio Spurs next year.
Wow. I can't top that. I mean,
I'll support it. Pop ain't going anywhere. Like he has an office there. Like he's still president of basketball operations or whatever. Him and RC have a good thing. He's going to hire his next coach. And I want to say it's going to be Will Hardy, but I don't think they'll turn it over to somebody that young. I think the Sixers are going to not win the title this year. They're probably not going to win the Eastern Conference Finals. And I think Brett Brown is going to get some overtures, if you will, from his old buddy, Greg Popovich, and his old buddy, R.C. Buford. And I think he's going to be like, you know what? I love the Spurs. I love these guys. Philly is super annoying. I'm going to go coach the Spurs next year. That's what I think. Those are my two-parted bold predictions.
That's as good of a prediction because it's double-sided. I mean, it's amazing. I can't top it. I think I see it. You talked me into the Popovich retiring thing. I think that makes sense. I don't see Brett Brown coming back because I don't think Brett Brown, if he loses in Philly, is going to be a real hot commodity.
Ooh, see, that's where you're wrong. I think his perceived, his personality and how he coaches and how his players like him and culturally how he fits. I think Brett Brown's a guy that a lot of people like. I really do.
Of the young guns, I think Will Hardy, you mentioned the young white guy, evil white guy. I think he's going to get the job over Becky Hammon, who the media will be pushing for. Because I think, in the response, people may be grumbling. I've heard talk Popovich is 70. He's an old army kind of guy. Does that fit in the modern NBA? So they might overreact to that and go even young, super young with Will Hardy. I think that makes more sense. But I like your prediction is top notch as far as bold goes.
Here's what I will say. The one thing is I do think the Spurs window is a little bit I like their young guys. Like I like Murray, I like Derek White, I like Lonnie Walker, I like Keldon Johnson, I like Lucas Samanik. And then my other bold prediction is they signed this guy Dalton Holmes to an Exhibit 10 deal. I don't know if you know who this is. He played for the Bucks in Summer League. He was Division II National Player of the Year from Point Loma University, which I believe is in California. 6'8", 215, and he shoots the absolute cover off the ball. And I think he's a guy that's going to end up playing some minutes for the Spurs this year.
Wait, what's his? I don't even have him written down. What's his name?
Dalton Holmes. DAULTONHOMMES. I do think he's the type of guy the Spurs. The Bucks had him in Summer League. He's just a great shooter. He's probably more of a 2 than a 3, and he's probably not going to be able to guard somebody. But I do think he's a guy that the Spurs need shooting. They signed him to play for their G League team, but I think they're going to be very protective of him. And I know for a fact they gave him upfront money on his Exhibit 10 deal, and I think they view him as the third guy in this rookie class with Keldon and Lucas Samanik, who they both.
Wow, Dalton. Wait, say his name again. I googled him. He didn't even show up. Say his name one more time. Dalton.
Hums. I think it's Hums. DAULTON is his first name.
DAU.
Yeah. HOMMES.
Okay, yeah, because I really, it's bad. You're going off the grid when you literally can't even find the guy on Google.
But the point is, I think that they want to hire somebody that they think can win with this team. And I do think if you do hire Will Hardy, who's been there for a long time, he's sort of been Pop's right-hand man for a long time as well. I think you're still hiring a guy who's 33 years old to be an NBA head coach. And it might work. It definitely could work given the culture they have there. But I also think that you need a guy who is going to be more likely to kind of go at Pop and RC Buford. Because the one thing with the Spurs is they've always worked really well together. And I think that Will is probably not quite seasoned enough to be that guy yet.
Well, it's a fun game at home. It's a play at home game for our listeners. Google Dalton Holmes and then try to guess white or black, because his name's Dalton. So I was thinking white, but then you said DAULT. I'm like, I don't know. Take a guess and then Google and then let us know if you got it right or not.
All right. League pass rating, B-. They're a group of guys that are good basketball players. They're going to be well coached. They're going to lose some games by a lot. They're going to win some games they shouldn't win. They're going to be pretty boring, but they're going to be different than a lot of NBA teams. But B- for me.
I would say C. I mean, like the Spurs are the kind of team where you don't have to tune in. You know they're going to win 45 games. They're almost like the playoff bar. Like they're going to win 45 games. Teams like young teams like Sacramento, Dallas, New Orleans, like, can you take the leap past this ball?
If you win more games, this is going to sound so stupid in theory, but I think you're exactly right. Like if you win more games than the San Antonio Spurs, you're probably making the playoffs. How does that sound?
Right. No, I mean, it's dumb, but smart. That is the task in the West.
All right. My favorite team in all of professional sports, the team that makes people turn off the podcast when we start talking about them. My favorite player, basically, I have all the James Harden stock in the world. Houston Rockets, 53-29 last year. Their over-under on Bovada is 54. We all know what happened in their offseason. They traded away Chris Paul. They traded for Russell Westbrook. Same kind of team, but it's Westbrook, James Harden, Eric Gordon, PJ Tucker, Clint Capella. Contributors, Austin Rivers, our favorite guy. Ben McLemore is in. Gerald Green is back. Daniel House with a new contract. Gary Clark is still there. They just signed Nene. Tyson Chandler's in. They brought in Anthony Bennett. Haven't really done anything with Iman Shumpert yet. I'm assuming he'll be back. I don't know what they have like $2.5 million left to spend. I'm guessing that's going to be him. But, I mean, what do you want to say about the Houston Rockets? We've talked about them ad nauseum on this show. It's very clear their best case scenario is NBA title. And honestly, they're probably the one team to me that's NBA title or bust. If they don't win the title this year, I think this is going to look drastically different. Even though Tillman Furtada has said they expect to compete for the next 4 years, I just don't buy it. Mike D'Antoni is on the last year of a guaranteed deal. If they don't win the title this year, I don't think Mike D'Antoni is going to be back, and I think that the Rockets are likely going to be very different in the future. Your thoughts?
Oof, I agree with you. And I was thinking, I agree, best case scenario, of course, they win the title and validate James Harden and Tyler Lowry's career.
And Russell Westbrook and Mike D'Antoni. There's a lot on the line here.
Yeah, totally. But you most of all, because you've been hyping them up for so long. The worst case scenario is the most interesting. Like, what does that look like? This is a team that won 60 games, the last few years and before last year. They averaged 60 wins over the previous 2 years. Let me clarify. A first round loss or is a second round loss? Do you think that's enough to blow it up?
It's really funny you said that, Zan, because I wrote like worst case scenario. Like I don't even want to think about it because like I truly believe they could win 55 games and lose in the first or second round of the NBA playoffs, and then like Mike D'Antoni gets fired, Russ and Harden are like publicly sniping at each other. Daryl Morey just quits, like goes to another team, like you said, like goes and runs the Knicks or does something else, and like I really don't know, like. Because I do think this is going to be a very good team. They are tremendously thin. Like their playoff rotation is really thin, and they're thin for a regular season team. To be honest with you, like this is a team that probably should be figuring out a way to get Harden and Westbrook's minutes in like the 30 to 32 range throughout the year, and they're not probably going to be able to do it because their bench stinks. But I'm not sure what the worst case scenario is. Like certainly if they miss the playoffs, I don't see that being an option.
No, that's not realistic. But like, do you think losing in the first round is enough to get? Or do you think losing the second round is enough?
Yeah, I think Mike D'Antoni's fired if they don't. I mean, I don't think they're just not going to renew his contract, but I think that happens if they lose in the first round. And I think if they lose in the first round, like I think Tillman Furtada is going to look very heavily at Daryl Morey and be like, hey, I'm a businessman and you told me all these things were good basketball moves and they did not work. And I think he's a loose cannon a little bit. I don't know. I think their worst case scenario is probably losing in the first round.
Yeah, that could happen. And it's not like you can easily shed Russell Westbrook after this because he has the big contract.
And again, that's why they gave Eric Gordon the contract extension. So he now is there for the next 4 years as well. They gave Clinton Capella an extension a year ago. Like he's got 3 more years. They are working on a deal with PJ Tucker. Like this particular core, with the exception of Mike D'Antoni, is there for the next 4 years. Like, and no matter who the general manager is, like you're figuring out a way to win with these players. The problem with this team is, what is their playoff rotation? Like, what are they doing? We got to think that they're not done yet. I sent you the thing on the Nene deal from Early Bird Rights, where like if he's traded to like a worse team, his contract counts for less money in the future. If he's traded for a good team, it counts for more money. So like they can get creative moving off of him later because it doesn't feel like he's going to play. But like they need another wing again. They still need another wing, and it's not Shumpert. So like, what's going to happen? What is Daryl Morey going to do, Zan?
Well, I think the regular season kind of scares me because they are so thin, and theoretically, I think they can get by in the playoffs playing their guys 40 minutes a night if they need to, if they're healthy. Can I give James Harden some compliments so you don't have to do it?
Well, I was just going to try not to talk about him the whole time because we've talked about Harden. I mean, this one is going to be
this is interesting to me. This is interesting to me in this sense. The Rockets have become more James Harden's team than D'Antoni's team, and I think that's reflected in their sort of power structure. But I don't think I've ever seen this before. And shout out to Basketball Reference for having all this stuff handy. But their pace, when first year of D'Antoni, was third in the NBA.
Yeah, they were 27th last year.
Last year it went down to 26th. And you think, wow, they're really slowing things down. That's such a drastically different approach. But because James Harden is so good offensively, they've had a top 3 defense regardless, top 2 defense, at the fast pace, at the slow pace.
Offense, you mean? Offensive.
Yeah, sorry. What did I say?
Defense.
But defense. No. The defense has gone up and down. Offense has been 1, 2, and 2. So to be the best offense in the league at a fast pace and the best offense in the league at a slow pace, and that's why I think this team is so good, and it's it doesn't matter. It almost doesn't matter who his teammates are. Harden can just score.
And they're going to play faster this year. They're going to play faster with Russ in the game. They're going to play faster with Harden in the game without Russ. Here's what they need more than anything. Daniel House, Ben McLemore, Gerald Green, one of you 3 guys needs to be a playable NBA small forward for the majority of the season. Gary Clark, I think we know who he is. Isaiah Hartenstein's a guy that's been in the rotation for a long time. But we talk about these guys how is Russ going to look with shooters around him? Harden might get better on offense and put up worse numbers because he might get more open threes. PJ Tucker and Eric Gordon, we can't have, I'm saying we, I'm a Rockets fan. The Rockets cannot have Eric Gordon shoot under 30% from 3 the first 50 games of the season. Otherwise, this is going to go way south.
Yeah, but that's unlikely. I mean, that was a strange slump for a guy who's always been a good shooter.
Right. So, but my point is they're going to play a lot faster. They're going to whip the ball around. It wouldn't stun me if the Rockets were top 5 in pace again, and also the best offense in the league. They're going to play differently now.
And I'd be remiss not to mention, adding Chris Paul does change your pace a lot too.
Right, and that was the point. And your point in a vacuum was hey, Harden is amazing. He was the best offensive player in the league, is playing super slow, and the best offensive player in the league. I mean, when he was their point guard, he led the NBA in assists. It's stupid. The guy is ridiculous. But I wanted so badly in my board predictions to predict that they were going to win the title, and I just don't think they're quite deep enough. I really don't, because the problem is going to be they're going to get every team's best shot, and Harden's going to have to do so much with Westbrook, and they don't have a long sample to try to figure out, okay, when somebody really figures out how to play Westbrook, how do we counter? And if the counter just is, all right, Harden reverts to shooting it 100 times, I don't know if that's going to work. I really wanted to do it. So my bold prediction is that I feel like Daryl Morey has set up the back end of his roster to be able to make one more big move. And I'm not sure if the big move is hey, they're going to pay luxury tax and go get Kevin Love. Are they going to go get Gallinari? Are they going to go get Blake Griffin? I don't know what it's going to be. But I do think they're going to make one more larger move that people think is not possible, because I don't think a lot of people look at their cap sheet. But again, the guys at Early Bird Rights do an awesome job. I think Morey has set it up to go get one more guy who can play 35 minutes in the playoffs. And so I think that's what's going to happen. I don't know who it's going to be. I want to revisit this when we get later in the year. But I think they still have one more person in terms of reinforcements on the way to Houston, because I think they know we still need a wing.
You backed off after the bold Brett Brown prediction. You back off the Houston title prediction. I'll tell you this. For my own purposes, I was going to write a little post too about it. Just power rankings, best teams in the league, 1 to 30. And the top is actually the hardest, to be honest.
Yeah.
The LA teams, and you have Milwaukee, you have Philly, you have Houston, Golden State.
Did you spend a lot of time debating Cleveland against Charlotte?
I swear to God, I was about to text you. I wanted to save it maybe, but Charlotte, Cleveland, who's the worst? I don't know. I was torn on that. That was one of my things. And you know what? Another one recently, Dallas and New Orleans too. That was a difficult one.
I think it's Cleveland. Anyway, go on.
You're going to like this though. I think Houston's the best team. And I'll give you an argument. I'll give you my argument. The best team in the last few years was Golden State, of course, at full strength. And I don't think it was that close. But I think in Houston's mind, like they were like right there. And I think they won 65 games 2 years ago. They took Golden State to 7 games. That series was not as close as that number may suggest, but still they were the second best team that year. And I think last year they almost treated themselves like Golden State did, where they kind of did not put the pedal to the metal in the regular season because they didn't care as much about the regular season anymore. Their defensive slippage was similar to Golden State's defensive slippage because they were thinking like, that's all that matters. We have to beat Golden State. They're like an obsessed, fan.
Correct.
And they didn't get it done again. I don't think they were the second best team last year in the league, but still, they're close to being title worthy. And my question, why I would default to them as the best team, is I'm not sold that another team has jumped past them. Toronto got worse, of course. The Lakers and the Clippers got better, but I haven't really seen evidence that those teams are now title-worthy teams. I don't think Milwaukee's necessarily a title-worthy team yet. I would default to the team that's been probably second best team over the last 2 years combined is Houston.
I think the mindset too is, and it's funny because Geraldo Vulgaris tweeted this, and he now works for the Dallas Mavericks. If you guys don't know who that is, he was a very successful NBA bettor, and like I said, he's now a consultant or head of analytics for Dallas. I'm not sure what his actual title is. But he tweeted last year, like Golden State versus Houston was the best plan against the best talent. And I think like that's very clearly true. And that's not to like kind of criticize James Harden at all, but your Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, Draymond Green team is better than Harden and CP3 by a good margin, even if you think Harden is the best player in the series. And so I do agree with you that they may be the best team. They are, in my opinion, probably not one of the top like 6 or 7 most talented teams. I just think that Harden is so generationally great that he elevates them. But I don't know what's going to happen. But they're 100% one of the 5 teams that should have the best odds to win the title. Because again, even if you don't love the fit with Westbrook and Harden, and I totally understand it,
and you know me, like I'm a Westbrook hater. Like, so for me to say that, like I just look at it like Westbrook, he had like, you can't undersell like how bad of a shooting year he had last year. I mean, he was just awful.
Arguably the worst shooting year of all time, just considering volume. Like I know Ricky Rubio's had some worse years specifically, but given the volume of Russell Westbrook's offensive impact, like probably the worst shooting season of all time.
Right. I mean, it's horrible. So why would a team like that be better for adding this guy? I hope for his sake, I've always thought his best role in the NBA is not to try to score 30 points a game. Like, be like super version of like Rajon Rondo when Rajon Rondo was good. And like instead of getting 30, 10 and 10, get 15, 15 and 15 or whatever it is, like really try to reduce your, that's unrealistic, but you know what I mean? Like be like the glue guy, X factor, almost like, like Draymond Green, when Kevin Durant showed up, like basically said, like, I don't need to score. I'm like never going to score, whatever. That's not my role. And Westbrook's not going to have that mindset, but just like take a significant step back in terms of your desire to score. And I think, be that guy when Harden's resting. Then I think the fit makes sense.
Here's the one thing I will add on this. Mike D'Antoni, whether or not he's the head coach next year or not, they like made him get rid of a lot of his staff. Like Jeff Bzdelik, who's been very important, is now with New Orleans. They let go of a bunch of other guys. It does feel like the Rockets are panicking a little bit. But Mike D'Antoni can flat out coach offense. Like, yes, James Harden is amazing. Russell Westbrook has never played with a coach close to as good as Mike D'Antoni is at coaching offense and finding fits for specific players. So I do think that is underselling how good these guys are as players, but I think D'Antoni is going to have some really good options for what to do with Russell Westbrook, where people are going to be like, oh yeah, that's right, he was playing with Billy Donovan and Scott Brooks. Like, no wonder he was a little bit worse on offense than he could be. And that's why, just to go into league pass rating, like for me, this is the, other than probably New Orleans, like they're the other A+ to me. Like they're just like, because you don't know what goes on, like I know the style of play is different. I want to just charge people to like watch them first this year before you just think like, oh, James Harden's going to get fouled in every possession. It's going to look different. Like they're going to be more up-tempo. They're going to be a little bit more exciting. They're still going to shoot a ton of threes. Like, but I do think like given the drama, I think this team is going to play with a crazy chip on their shoulder. I think as crazy bad as people think Westbrook could be for Harden, I think together these dudes are just going to go out and try to like just be Thanos, if you will, and just decimate everybody in their path. And I think that's really fun to watch. And so that's why for me, I'm into it.
And it's the NBA is about depth and fit and everything like that, but it's sometimes it's just like I remember growing up and watching Shaq, just like he was unstoppable, and Shaq and Kobe was like when they've won their first title, Kobe was clearly like the second best player. And then because open shots for everyone else, and then Robert Horry and Derek Fisher, like that was a good enough supporting cast to win the title. I see that with Houston. Like James Harden is so good as a scorer. And I don't think, I think it's just a matter of like hacking the system and, like drawing a lot of threes and free throws. Like good for him. He figured out like the hole in the system, the flaw in the scoring structure of the NBA. I think guys like Daniel House and PJ Tucker and Eric Gordon are those guys going to hit their open shots? And if they do, this team's going to win the title.
Yeah, I hope so. I like I said, I just think it's annoying to me when guys get rated on titles and like you're clearly rated a tier down because you don't end up winning, and you don't look at situation like, to me, like Russell Westbrook is not yet one of the 25 best players of all time, and I don't know how close he is, but like the idea that people are just like, Kobe Bryant is so much better than James Harden, like the stats just don't bear that out. Like, yes, he has 5 rings, but like the stats don't bear out that he's way better. Like, and Harden and peak Dwayne Wade are like, in my opinion, very close, but I don't think that people really would rank Harden in front of Wade. And that's because like Harden.
Yeah, I agree with you in this sense. Like Harden, I agree. Like I think Harden is on par with those guys.
His last 5 years has truly been one of the greatest offensive 5-year peaks in NBA history. Like
absolutely. But the thing I depart from you is like, I don't think Westbrook's a top 20 player. So like, I think Westbrook it's just a matter of like managing his expectations.
I just sort of threw that out there. Like I can't say, you might at one point in your crazy life, you just did a post about like, what if every NBA lineup was like a set of aliens? Like, so you might actually rank the top 100 players of all time, like, and spend a lot of time on it. Like, I'm not going to do that. So I just threw it out there. Like Westbrook might not even be like a top 50 player of all time. But again, the guy did average a triple double for 3 straight years. He's won an MVP, first team all league. Like it's a lot of numbers. Like he's a Hall of Famer.
A lot of narratives. Yeah. Okay.
Right. But my point is, this is the group of guys, and including Mike D'Antoni, who ultimately was the first guy to bring spread pick and roll into the NBA with the Phoenix Suns. Like, this is the group of guys that I want to see validated this year. So, like, as I'm very excited for the Rockets, I would like to see them win, not because I'm a fan of the team, but because, like, I hate that guys get brought back down to earth because they don't win titles. And I think this is a group of 3 guys, and Daryl Morey specifically, who also should get lumped in with this, that it benefits the most from winning a title, and that's who I want to see win the title this year.
It's funny that you touched on something that's like become my fandom, because my family's not originally from LA, so I was never like a diehard fan in that sense. But like I became a fan, like anti-narrative fan. So like my favorite football player was like Peyton Manning, because he had like this, he's not a winner and mentality for so long. And same with Kevin Durant. He had that same like rap against him, even though he's clearly a great player. He just needed like a title, and he still hasn't gotten that sort of validation necessarily. So in that sense, I should like James Harden like you do. He's just annoying to me. I don't root for him in the same way, but I mean, logically I should.
People who get mad about the way James Harden plays, like, it's totally fine with me. If you don't like watching him play, that's fine. I because ultimately, like, sports are entertainment, and we're now at the 90-minute mark. So I'm going to wrap this rant up and we'll rate the division and get out of here. But like, if you don't like the way James Harden plays, that's fine. You don't need to watch. There is a difference between like, you don't like how James Harden plays and James Harden isn't amazing at basketball. Like that divide. Same thing with Peyton Manning. If you don't think Peyton Manning can win the big game, great. But that doesn't mean that Peyton Manning isn't unequivocally great at football and one of the best quarterbacks of all time. And I truly believe that about James Harden too. Just because like you don't like him how he plays, he doesn't cheat. He's not gaming the system. He's just the best at doing the style of play that he plays. And I think like that's the issue with Houston, where I think if he were to win a title, his specific style of basketball and his kind of like
totally. What it kind of reminds me of, like, I hate Tom Brady for the same reason, because I'm like, I always get frustrated at home. I'm like, God, these stupid NFL defenses, like, they do not realize like you can't guard Julian Edelman with a big slow linebacker. It's like a cheat in the system. It's so easy. But credit to him for taking advantage. I feel like
every
James Harden.
Single time. Yeah. You're exactly right. All right. So let's rank the divisions real quick. Like let's rank them in the way that you think they're going to finish.
I'm still not soaring. I'll just do the same, like, to be boring. Houston, San Antonio. I was still not sold on whether Dallas or New Orleans. So I'm going to go New Orleans and then Dallas and then clearly Memphis last.
All right, I got that. I'm going to go out of the. I think it's Houston. I think Dallas is going to finish second. I think it's going to be Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, New Orleans, Memphis. That's what I will take.
Dallas over San Antonio is one of your bolder predictions, along with Brett Brown. You have 2 on the record now.
I do just think Dallas. Like
Dalton Holmes. That's your you have 3. You're on fire.
I think Dallas is. I might have some inside information on Dalton Holmes. I don't have any inside information on Brett Brown. I will say that, but the Dalton prediction is not totally out of nowhere. Well-embedded moles inside of my organization.
In your alt-right
have given me a lot of info. That is it for this week. We will do what I believe is the Atlantic Division next week. That is the Knicks and the Sixers, and that division will be probably very fun. Knicks, Sixers, Celtics, Nets, and Raptors should be a very fun division. That'll be episode 60 of the NBA show, and then we will be back. We're going to keep trucking on once a week. Maybe crazy things happen. We go to twice a week. I don't know, but we'll be back next week. And Zan, as always, I'm at CYS Tyler on Twitter. He is at Zan_Ellison. He is the same username on Reddit if you want to read about aliens. And then email the show, ZandrickEllison@gmail.com. But Zan, as always, it's a pleasure, and we'll be back next week.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Underdog Sports NBA show with your hosts, Tyler Laurie and Zandrick Ellison. Tune in next week for more NBA storylines and news.